Hi. Today we're going to talk a little bit about benchmark fractions. So in this video, I'm going to try and quickly go over what a benchmark fraction is and how we use them to compare fractions. So there's a word problem that the kids are expected to finish for their homework today. And in my class, we went over these problems and completed most of the word problem. So right here, you really can't see it, but this is kind of what it looks like. And the first part, A, is actually the question that involves benchmark fractions. We'll go over that in a second. A benchmark fraction is a fraction that you use to compare other fractions to. Now, I'm going to show you this. Maybe you've seen these before, but these are benchmark fractions. 1, 1/2, 1/3, 1/4, 1/5, 1/6, on down the line. So we use these benchmark fractions to make comparisons. And the word problem that I have represented on the board is from the worksheet. And it basically says, Mark and Martha, they got a job mowing the lawn of a football field. They worked all day. And at the end of the day, Mark, who is 3/7, he mowed 3/7 of the field. So I represented that visually like this. And then Martha, she mowed 2/5 of the field, so I represented it like this. And this is an acceptable way of representing fractions to prove which one is bigger. You can see that 3/7 is bigger. The problem with this is that most kids don't have the spatial ability to draw kind of a scale model of this visual representation. But we can, in using benchmark fractions, determine if they mowed the entire field. And that's what A says. It says, using benchmark fractions, explain if Mark and Martha were able to mow the entire field. So the entire field is the whole thing. We know that 2 halves make a whole. They make one whole. So we need to look at the fraction 3/7 and 2/5. And we need to say to ourselves, is 3/7 larger or smaller than or equal to 1/2? So visually we can see, even if you made a crude model, that 3 out of 7 is not halfway. So this is smaller than 1/2. Same down here, even if we made a crude model, we can see that 2 out of 5 or 2/5 is also smaller than 1/2. So if both Mark and Martha mowed less than 1/2 of the field, there's absolutely no way that they could have mowed the entire field. So this is a real simple way to use benchmark fractions to compare fractions and then come up with a logical answer, which is part A of the worksheet. Probably the hardest part of the worksheet because it's asking the kids to use a new skill of comparing benchmark fractions and not using calculations in order to come up with an answer. So I explained this to the kids in this method. If they want to watch it again to kind of try and figure it out, there's going to be a similar question on their test tomorrow. That's the best way we can kind of explain benchmark fractions. I'd say maybe half of the class, and I'm not talking about my class, but half of the entire 5th grade class probably understand well on how to compare benchmark fractions to come up with an answer. It's one question out of the entire test. So we're just trying to get kids to get that basic knowledge of how to use benchmark fractions to answer basic questions about certain equations like that. So that's enough for benchmark fractions. I got one more video, which is the rest of this sheet, the front part, just going through a couple of problems and giving some help. So look for that on my other video. Thank you.